Good evening and welcome to Live and Let Live for Saturday, October 14th, 2006. I'm Gary Johnson. Tonight our guest on Live and Let Live is a man who needs no introduction. Nationally syndicated radio talk show host, documentary filmmaker, webmaster, author, and public access television producer, Alex Jones. Alex, welcome to Live and Let Live.
Gary, I got excited when you invited me down. You know, my wife, many times we sit there and lay in bed and watch this show, and then we watch the show that comes on after with you, and we really enjoy the information.
Well, I'm glad you're watching, Alex. And of course, we watch you every week and listen to you on the radio and all that. We're going to talk about all your kind of media empire and all that.
It's grassroots, but we are having an effect.
Well, let's begin by talking about Terror Storm in general, and also Terror Storm and Google. So how is Terror Storm doing?
Well, for those that are just now, joining us and wondering why is he talking about Terror Storm and Google, there's been somewhat of a controversy. And obviously, you must be up to speed on that because you're bringing it up. Things like, the famous film now, Loose Change Second Edition, with my good friend Dylan Avery, has been seen over 30 million times on the internet, according to some of the big sites that stream video for free. And that's what Dylan and them wanted to do. Well, with Terror Storm, I've made my other films available on the internet for free because I want to get the information out. But with Terror Storm, I hired Hollywood music people, local Graham Reynolds who's done music for big films. Mm-hmm. I spent a lot more money. I usually spend about 20, 30 grand on a film. I spent about 100 grand on this film. But I wanted to get the truth out about 9/11 being an inside job and other government-sponsored terror events. So I put it on the internet for free before I even had DVDs for my general audience, before I even tried to put them in stores around the country, because I wanted to get the information out. That was the number one goal. And then after about a month or so, because it took time to build up, a couple million people had seen it on the hit counters. Yeah. And then we noticed that Google had erased that. And then they did it again after about 2 more million people had found it. And of course, I got alerted to the fact that they were deleting the viewership statistics of the 20-something versions that were up there. Other people had uploaded it too. I got alerted before because it had been erased, but we've caught them twice, and Google's issued a press release and admitted that they're accidentally erasing my statistics. Now, look, I don't care about winning some brass ring and having a bunch of statistics and showing that millions of people have seen my film for free. The goal is people seeing the film. But when you're in the top 100 of Google, when you're able to get your film into the top 100, hundreds of millions of people a month and growing go and look at that top 100. And so basically it's like having my documentary film on national television to get into that top 100. And every time we noticed that it also went into the top 100, that's why they were deleting our statistics, because it wasn't just in the top 100, it was rapidly climbing towards the top. And then once you get there, it's hard to get out of the top 100, yes. And you stay up at the top, and that's how you get 30 million viewers to a film like Loose Change has had. So they're cheating me. It's kind of like being an NFL football game, and you keep making touchdowns in the political fight, and they with your ideas in the big world of ideas. Basically, they are cheating us and not letting us do that. And Google admits that they've censored in China, now censored in India. Right. They admit they're censoring here now domestically in some cases, and they are censoring us. And since we announced this, they've been censoring other patriot and truth and libertarian freedom-style films. And now Yahoo's been caught censoring YouTube links. You can't send a YouTube link over Yahoo. That was in the New York Times. That was also in the Register. So they're also censoring each other. We have these big corporations basically unannounced engaging in non-net neutrality. For people that don't know what net neutrality is, basically it's just agreeing to let information free flow over the web without corporations blocking out certain types of information or certain types of data transmissions from their competitors. So we already see the internet beginning to lose some of its freedom. It's quite frightening. But we know the establishment has to do this, because when a website like prisonplanet.com, which I don't claim is the greatest thing in the world, is as big now at Alexa.com and other places in the web ratings as the Dallas Morning News, when prisonplanet.com is several thousand places ahead of the Washington Times in web ratings, then you know they've got to do something about it. And it's not just my site. There are 25-year-olds, 65-year-olds, it doesn't matter, starting up websites who are saying something people want to hear that, whereas it's taken me 6, 7, 8 years to build my couple of websites up to being totally gigantic, bigger than Dallas Morning News in some cases. In the case of prisonplanet.com, Infowars.com isn't that big, but it's quite larger than most big city papers. There are people coming on the scene out of nowhere in 3 months that have sites bigger than mine. And so it's got to be panicking the establishment. It's got to be scaring the living hell out of them right now, because people know I'm not perfect. They know I don't have all the answers, but at least I'm trying to tell the truth. I'm trying to find the truth. I'm trying to investigate. And they're starting their own websites doing this too. And so the mainstream media still has this facade of elitism, this facade of being unstoppable, this facade of, I mean, how does the Dallas Morning News, owned by Belo, make tens of millions of dollars a year? But my website has more visitors than them, and I'm making basically nothing. Can barely pay the bills for the bandwidth. Again, it's still that elitist illusion. Here's an example, and then I'll shut up and let you comment. Here's an example. I put ads for employees in the Statesman. Yes. And because I have like 10 employees now, and I might get 10 responses in a week of ads that cost, just $300 a pop. I put a free ad in Craigslist and have 200 phone calls and all these geniuses. Right. It's just, you're gone. Statesman, Dallas Morning News, all of you. You're dead. It's over unless you and your cronies shut down the web, and now you're doing it. Piece by piece. Sorry.
All right. Go ahead, I want to take a look. I keep forgetting I'm doing this wrong. I want to take a look at the Google website and take a look at this top 100 list that you're talking about, so people can know what this is all about. So we go first to Google, and what do? Click video?
You click video right there.
Which is video? This
I like this. I need to do this on my show. Okay. I get addicted to this, Gary.
All right. So now we're on video, and what are we looking at now?
Well, you're in the top 100.
Okay.
Are you in the top 100? No, you're in the popular section, which it opens automatically.
Okay.
See top 100 right there on the left-hand side in the bar? Right here.
Okay, top 100. Okay.
Top 100.
Click that.
Mm-hmm. And we've been all over the top 100, and since I put it on the web a few months ago for free, and then every time it climbs up, and it's about to get to the coveted top 20 or 30, which is normally inhabited by girls in bikinis.
Yes.
As soon as that happens, they delete TerrorStorm out. And TerrorStorm was up there until a couple of days ago, and they deleted our views again. And so and then now it'll build back up and push us back in. They will delete us while not deleting anybody else. Let's be clear.
All right.
They're not deleting, what is it? Bambi Panda sneezers, funny commercial of girl taking a guy's shorts, fire fart, that type of, because, we're actually cleaning fire farts, a clock.
Right.
Fire fart is cheating there with Google's help.
All right. So if people want to find your site, what do they do? Type in TerrorStorm?
Yeah, just type in TerrorStorm. Terror, and then you can do it 2 words, 1 word, storm.
Oh, let's do 2 words.
And then you will find. I like this, Gary. I like the fact you're helping us here get this out. So what I'm doing is this big campaign now, and then you see all different versions people have uploaded.
Right, now the different versions. I want you to explain, how do we tell which is the good version?
The one I uploaded says deluxe, high quality. Somebody else uploaded a good one.
Here's a deluxe, high quality.
Okay.
I don't know if this will come up immediately.
And by deluxe high quality, Google still compresses it. You may have to download some player.
Error in their JavaScript.
Yeah, who knows? And then there you go. You are streaming TerrorStorm. I should do this on my own show. This is smart, having a laptop hooked up in here. But
there it is.
So what we're asking people to do is, I spent basically 100 smackers, 100 grand making this for you. I put it out there for free for you. And they've cheated us because, again, we're not after money. We're after waking people up and exposing the terrorists that really carried out 9/11. That's the military-industrial complex. It's a labor of love. I want you to see my work. I want you to critique it. And now Google, every time it goes in the top 100, where once you get into that and move up, it's a snowball.
Well,
tens of millions will see it. They've cheated us.
So you see your statistics. How do you see you just see the ranking, I guess, or can you have access to something?
Oh no, you can see statistics. That's how we're able to do it. In fact, look at this one. This is just one of the high quality versions.
Yes.
It was reset. I don't know,
it's a number up here, 94,000 views. I don't know if that means.
Yeah, and that means you have to watch the whole video end to end. and that has been deleted twice that we know of.
It's been deleted.
Yes.
By whom?
Google admits, we have their little press release to us. There's thousands of my listeners asking why they did it. They said, it's an accident. We keep deleting his page views, but we go, but you're not doing it to succulent bikini babes. Or you're not doing it to Loose Change Second Edition. They've got on this one video, 5 million views or something on this particular page. Because again, there's all these different versions of it and all these different uploads of it. And they just say, well, it's an accident. We just keep doing it to Terror Storm.
Okay.
And now they bought YouTube. People say, well, go to
Google
YouTube.
bought YouTube.
Yeah, go to YouTube. You can put your film there. And then Google buys it.
All right. Now, when you complained to them, what did they say?
We have their press release. They say it's an accident, and that it won't happen again, and then it happened again.
It's happened more than once.
It's happened twice that we know of, but I was alerted that, hey, they're erasing your ranking. And so I kind of ignored the few emails I got. People noticed.
Yes.
And then, because the web community is pretty sharp, I get all this feedback, and it's really smart people. But this is just folks that had noticed it. And then a few weeks later, I thought, hey, let me check that. And I just seen it a few days before with, millions of views. And I go look, and it says like 10,000. And so I went on the radio, and I said, hey, they just erased it. And I asked Google why they didn't. They said, it's an accident. And then a couple of weeks later, they did it again.
Well, I want to kind of segue here about you putting your video up on Google. Here you are, you make this documentary.
Yes.
It costs money to make a documentary. The normal business model is that you have a cost of making something and then you sell it for a profit, and theoretically you can then have enough money to make your next documentary. If you spend money to make a documentary and you give it away for free, where do you get the money for the next documentary?
Well, I will tell you that since I have gotten on the radio every day on my syndicated show that's on over 80 AM and FM stations, but it's like 45, 50 during the day and 30 or 40 at night re-air it. And the number fluctuates. It's actually, I think, more than 80 now. Now I'm on KLBJ too, and we've syndicated it through MS as well, and that's picked up quite a few stations. But to make a long story short, when I get on the radio and I tell people to go to Google Video and get my film for free, I have noticed that my actual sales of DVDs and VHS have dropped off quite a bit. But Gary, this is such an important thing.
Yes.
That I just can't not. I really don't care.
Okay.
And so yes, I am actually losing money. But in the past, I made some films. I made some documentaries. I have a syndicated radio show. I get a decent paycheck. I have some sponsors. And so yes, I'm kind of like a little foundation now.
Yeah.
And I am now funding my political ideas with the money I've made in the past. And I do see it, actually making a new film and paying people may actually be a problem, because now I'm not making low-budget documentaries. I'm making a little bit more high-budget. And I think I've got 3 or 4 more videos in me before I'm completely broke. And I think I'll just have to go ahead and do that, because if you know that terrorists have carried out a terror attack and the terrorists are your government, it just really doesn't matter.
All right. So...
But this model is also bankrupting the mainstream media in Hollywood, so I kind of enjoy it.
But it would seem to me that you would actually be able to sell things. People are going to still buy things anyway.
They still do, but it's greatly reduced, because see, the problem is, a year or two ago, the web was like an advertisement tool.
Right, that's
because
what
it was
so
cruddy.
You were like a lost leader, and then people would buy the DVD or whatever after getting the sample.
Yeah, it's like a free advertisement.
Yeah.
That doesn't really hold now that it's getting clear. Now that it's gotten real good, now that it's it's like they've tried. Stephen King tried like 5 years ago giving one of his novels out for free and just trusting people, and the thing bankrupt. Folks now with 300 channels of cable, or 400 now, whatever it is, and with hundreds of channels of radio and millions of web pages, billions now.
Yes.
It's just this is a whole crisis for the entire society, for people who are just doing this for money. And at a certain point, money is just a unit or symbol of energy. And so at a point, it will hurt me too. It's just, I just need enough to live, so I don't care. My goal isn't some gigantic house and huge golf courses and driving the Bentley. But this is a crisis for the entire media society, a crisis for everything, a crisis for industry in the future as robotics takes over manufacturing, that humans aren't needed. So what job do they have to buy the products of the robotic factories? Nanotech comes out, nanotech farms, nanotech products, all of this. I think what we see in cyber cyberspace is going to be
Yes.
duplicated in the three-dimensional real, dimension that we live in.
Right. Okay. So you still have revenue sources. You have a radio show, and so let's talk about your radio
That's
show.
what I'm doing. I'm feeding that with things at our profit centers.
So you have a nationally syndicated radio show on Genesis Communications Network.
Yes, sir.
And I assume most people know what that is, but why don't you give a little explanation of what that is?
It's just a little radio network that actually is on the big radio satellites, and that I've been with them for about 8 years, and then there was a little radio network I was on before that. My local show got heard because I had some guys on who had a little radio network just on a little TV satellite, but people would watch it on the side channel.
Right.
And then I got on that for a couple of years and learned syndicated radio and got calls to my local show, which kind of enriched it. And I was sitting there at the local KJFK getting all these calls from around the country.
Yes.
And that was before the internet was even big, in the late 90s. And they're going, "You're not really syndicated." And there's like actual commercial stations picking it up in Florida
really?
and Michigan. Yeah, this is even back in like in '98. And the goofy program director who hated my guts would get real jealous. He'd go, his name was Brian Billick. He'd say that you're not really syndicated. And I remember going, well, we're on the satellite and we're really doing this, and we're running off a phone line to Michigan and then up
Yes.
to the satellite. But I mean, now I'm really syndicated, mainstream.
Right.
The company I'm with leases a satellite feed from ABC. We're on the Star Guide dish, and so folks pick us up around the country.
All right. And you're now on KLBJ radio on Sundays, and you're now syndicating that.
Yes, they offered me a weekday show, or actually to be technical, 7 to 10 every night. They were looking at doing that, and I just said, I can't do my syndicated show during the day. And they said, well, we can't pick it up live. It's got to be live. We can't to get rid of Rush Limbaugh. I'm up against Rush Limbaugh. Okay. And so they said, well, will you do a weeknight show? And I said I couldn't do it, but I said, let's do a Sunday show.
Yes.
And syndicate it. And we just syndicated it 2 weeks ago, and it's got like 5 stations now. It's growing slowly. So a lot of the stations have to move other programs to then move us into there. But it's 4 to 6 coming up tomorrow.
Yes.
On KLBJ. And we've already syndicated that. It's the first show, MS Communications, that owns Texas Monthly and a whole bunch of big radio stations and newspapers. They've never syndicated a show. This
Really?
is the first MS show they've ever syndicated.
So I guess I don't know all the mergers and so forth. I guess they bought up KLBJ several years ago.
3 years ago.
3 years ago. And so you're on KLBJ. I want to ask you, do you ever talk about the Gulf of Tonkin incident?
Yes, I do. In my film, Terror Storm,
Yes.
it talks about the Gulf of Tonkin, where they didn't actually attack our ships. They just claimed they were attacked, so they didn't kill any of our sailors. But it's now, it was called a conspiracy theory for 40 years. Now, totally declassified, that the government staged the attack, it didn't happen, and that fraud led to 58,000 American deaths and over 1.5 million dead Vietnamese.
All right. I actually want to talk a little bit about your different websites.
Sure.
You have more than one website, and so actually I want to just take a look at them one by one, and because they're different. I mean, you would think, you go to Infowars.com, and then you see another domain, and it's going to be, you're pointing to the same page, but actually these are all completely different.
Yes, and we're going to redesign them someday, but some people like it that they're still primitive HTML. I could have already gone to the blog format years ago, but kind of like Drudge hasn't gone to that.
Yes.
And because still a lot of people have primitive computers, and it's just.
Yeah, I have a primitive computer.
But next year, a few of the sites are going to change. But yeah, Infowars.com.
Okay. Well, let's look at Infowars.com right now. It seems to me this one's kind of tied a lot to the radio show. Is that right?
Yeah, it's more personalized, and it's got a lot of ads on it, but it's got also just hundreds of stories every day, and it's big.
Who does this?
Ryan Slickeisen, my wife, Miss Nichols.
Yes.
She's Miss Jones, but we like to, use
Violet
her.
Nichols. Violet Jones.
Yeah, Miss Jones. And then basically I sit there and hover around all day and write this, do that, post this, and then and then Ryan writes articles every day, and I got Aaron Dykes writing articles, and Rob Jacobson writes articles. We got our video editors in there.
All right. Are they in Austin?
Yeah, well, I've got writers and people that work for the site in Louisiana, London, England, and Austin, Texas, and Dallas.
All right. So Infowars is, all these websites are, I was under the impression like one was based out of London and another one's.
Prison Planet is.
Okay. So that's Infowars.com. All right. Now, you got Infowars.net. That seems to be more of a having to do with people getting internet service or something. What is that?
Well, that came out of about 5 years ago. I didn't have the money to pay for servers because back then I tried to give videos out for free, and literally some months I get $10,000 bills. That was shopping around for bandwidth.
Right.
And so I said, well, we'll do this internet service stuff and try to do that. And that's kind of like a vestigial body part of that. It's not a profit center. So now it's kind of shifted into news. This is one of the sites that's going to go into one of the new blog formats in the first of the year. And we've really been now trying to promote this site. And it's gone from being rated the size of a small town paper to being rated like a big city paper now. So that gets a couple million readers a month.
Yes.
Whereas the big sites get some days millions a day, but always about 3 million a week.
Okay.
Like something like prisonplanet.com is huge.
All right, and I guess
look at Limbaugh. You can even play the clip. Limbaugh attacked me last Wednesday,
right,
which is great. These guys just can't help
play
it.
the clip.
Yeah, well, if you go, and then now it takes you to Prison Planet, which is out of London. Well, this is out of Sheffield. This is out of Sheffield, England. Oh, you'll have to read. There's a little clip in there somewhere, but it should say, "Listen to the click here for the audio clip."
It's an audio clip.
But anyways,
Oh, I may have to turn the volume.
you can crank it up. It's all right.
Oh, wait, it wants me to save it. I'm not set up to play it. I'm sorry.
It's all right. Don't worry about it. But, yeah, I mean, to be technical, Prison Planet's out of Sheffield, England. Infowars.net and prisonplanet.tv are out of London.
Okay. And, well, Prison Planet is a pretty big site.
Oh, it's big. It's bigger than the Dallas Morning News, and it is now as big in the ratings. Right, it's just about to pass him, Rush Limbaugh's website, which he has 600 radio stations. He's on Armed Service Radio. He's had shows on ESPN, national TV shows. He spent 20 years getting as big as he is. And again, alternative media. Prison Planet is now neck and neck going into pole position against Rush Limbaugh.
So, prisonplanet.com is not really just your radio show and like, appendix to your radio show. It has other things as well. Is that right?
Yes. I mean, it's. I write articles almost every day.
Yes.
Paul Watson writes. I mean, I found Paul Watson with his own website, and he was 20 years old at the time. He's 24 now, and he'd been to college. His brother's a few years older and works for me. Steve Watson. He's got a master's degree in political science.
So I was wondering about the Watsons. They're brothers.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Steve's like 27. He's got a master's degree in political science and international relations, foreign affairs. He's a real smart guy. Paul's just as smart as his brother. He's the first one I hired. I hired him when he was 20. And now he's 24. He's the little brother, but he's the head honcho. And I was reading his site, and I was like, he wasn't copying what I was saying. He had the exact same view I did. But, but I mean, it was like the same model of video camera, just seeing the same thing. It wasn't like he was copying. I mean, this guy knew, and I talked to him, and I said, man, you got to come over here, and you got to do a website for me, and you got to write stories for me, because it's actually like a clone.
Right.
I mean, not in his mannerisms and things. He's actually very reserved, but it's like an actual clone. You can't beat this.
You don't have to send each other memos because you're already on the same wavelength.
We are on the same wavelength.
Okay. And what sort of things would we? You see a lot of articles on prisonplanet.com. I mean, it's a lot of original writing, not just links to other sites.
Yeah. Well, I mean, today I got on the phone with Steve Watson, and in about 20 minutes we wrote this article together. The one at the top, scientific poll, 84% reject official 9/11 story.
This is on the right? Which one are you talking about? This one?
Yeah, this one right here.
Okay, I'll click it.
Yeah, that one.
Maybe I should click it. All right.
Who knows what's going on? It may be having sluggishness because it gets...
All right, this is the one. This is the one about the poll.
Yes. Scientific poll, 84% reject official story. Now this is
the
really
New York Times CBS News poll.
Yep. And then really all we do is we give our analysis of an event that's happened.
Do you think members of the Bush administration are telling the truth, are mostly telling the truth but hiding something, or are they mostly lying? Telling the truth 16%, hiding something 53%, mostly lying 28%, not sure 3%.
So we've got 84% that don't believe the official story and 16 that do. And this is what's great is this is Angus Reid statistics. This is as respected as Zogby. And this is a scientific poll. You can go read about it at prisonplanet.com. You can link through to Angus Reid. You can link through to the New York Times, CBS News. And you can see this, but this is the most exciting news, Gary, I've seen in a long time. But I want to be clear here. I don't want to just sit up here and brag. I got these websites, getting all these visitors, and I'm going broke. But so what? That's not really, but it's not as good as it used to be. But I don't care. I'm just obsessed with pouring myself into it because it's about survival. I mean, they want to go to war with Iran. They're hurtling us towards national conscription, introduce legislation. They abolished basically the Bill of Rights with H.R. 6166, which was just unbelievable. Right. And we can talk about that later if you like, Gary.
Yes, we will.
All of this is just swarming around, and I literally have been looking at other countries to escape. I mean, I'm not going to go unless the ship's really about to, keeling over and about to capsize. But I mean, it's starting to. Mm-hmm. And I mean, this is scary. And it's Bob Woodward's giving speeches saying we're going into martial law. I mean, it's not just, Cy Hirsch, a New Yorker. These are serious people. Yeah. I mean, every indices, as you know, is just rampant corruption, rampant going to seed. Everybody needs to vote for Rock Howard against that monster for state senate, Kirk banker, phony liberal Watson, Libertarian candidate who's in there in the control room.
Right.
Vote for any alternative. Against.
He wants me to ask you about Kurt Watson. What can you tell us about Kurt Watson?
He's like all these little.
He was a big land flipper for one thing, and he was connected at one time. Didn't you say he wanted to ban guns or something?
Yes. He tried to bring in a citywide. Like Chicago, no guns unless they're registered, and then ban a whole bunch of different types. In Texas,
yes.
And again, the Democratic Party ever got away from their gun grabbing, they'd probably get back into power. But again, the Republicans are gun grabbing just as fast as they are. But Kirk Watson. Well, SOS, Save Our Springs, had a bunch of well-meaning, useful idiots, because I'm all against dumping toxic waste and all this bad stuff, and all these things happening. But anytime you see, I've been to a smart growth conference, one they had in '98. It was the head of Bank of America and Dallas Cowboys and all these Republicans, and it was all about openly. They were bragging.
Yes.
And they grabbed 15,000 acres, had us pay for it. But before they did that, they laid it off use for a few years, drove down the price to like 8 cents 8 cents to the dollar of what it had been previously, and then took the land use away. The people dumped it thinking it'd be some giant 15,000 acre park. That was just one by almost 15,000 acres in southwest Travis County. And then they turned around 2 years later when everybody forgot, as they've done nationwide. Nature Conservancy, Sierra Club are the biggest landowners in this country now. They flip it, take restrictions off piecemeal for their buddies, and then now just build ranchettes and 5-star luxury spa golf courses. And it's the same scam nationwide. And now the hippies, who are good folks, would laugh at me 5 years ago, and now you're crying, folks, because you saw exactly what I told you happen. Kirk Watson is a crook. And that's really all I can say. And he can sue me if he wants, because I'll get him into discovery, and I'll get all the facts on him. We know what you've done, Watson. We know what you've done with land deals. Shame on you.
All right.
I know farmers and ranchers, people who lost their property. They couldn't pay the property tax. They couldn't build on it. They took their land. You ruined people's lives, and that's criminal.
Well, yet, as you frequently put it, it's all about herding us into the compact city. It's all about moving us. They'll take the good land, and we all get squeezed into the bad land. Actually, there are a couple of websites we didn't talk about. What is Jones Report?
Oh, Jones Report is a little site that's going to go to blog format in the new year. I set it up about 6 years ago, just as a kind of a joke knockoff of the Drudge Report.
Uh-huh.
And but now we've been updating it a couple times a day.
Yes.
For about 6 months, and it's getting a lot of visitors now. It's the size of a mid-sized city's newspaper and visitors. And it's just real simple. It's just facts. Mainly what we do is show you legislation, show you propaganda, write a few articles a day for each site. But then really we just go find all the sites and go, oh, there were 3 times this week where the police beat up quadriplegics. That's where I always get it mixed up. Is that where you're paralyzed chest down?
Quadra, I would assume maybe 4.
Okay.
So,
yeah. So, okay, so.
I don't know, actually.
The point is that I will notice, or a listener will notice. The best thing we have is like 10,000 emails a day. Half of them are Viagra and mortgage and Nigerian prince spam. But thousands of them are real. So we're all trying to go through it. It's like a war room. But people go, had you noticed 3 times this week, Florida and Ohio and California, they beat up people who were paralyzed? And so we'll go, hey, write an article about how the police have gotten so attack dog mindless that 3 times this week, because it's not good enough to have them beat up a guy in a wheelchair once, it's like good if you have it 3 times. And we're not just against the police, we're just showing this pattern. Why this never happened in the past? Why just now are they doing this? And then we show each story side by side. It's the same newscast, same thing, different parts of the country. Cop pulls over, says, what are these? Well, these are hand controls. The cop's on so many steroids. He says, get out of the car. The person says, okay, I've got to get my wheelchair out. The cop goes nuts on roids. And it's always some giant guy on steroids. And it's something like in the wolf, mad dog mentality, sociologically, that it makes them attack people who are paralyzed. It's like I don't like it, you're paralyzed. They bash their heads in the concrete. And then the reason that story I thought was so interesting, that there were 3 in 1 week, is that I had a friend who's a manager of a Home Depot a couple years ago, maybe 4 years ago now, who is paralyzed chest down. And they pulled him over and they said, get out of the car with his wife. He said, well, I'm paralyzed. Let's get out. And he said, bullshit, get out. Excuse me, I'm sorry. He said, get out now, and drug him out of the window and beat him up. And hell, that cop got promoted. He's like a high-level APD now. Well, but I mean, it's this amazing. But my point is, it's all the real stuff. It's real. It's crazy. You can't believe it. And it's the stuff that's buried in the paper.
Right.
I mean, take this. The Chicago Tribune is regionalized because the national media is where there's a lot of good reporters at the Statesman, Chicago Tribune, Dallas Morning News, wherever, but they never get promoted. They never get invited on O'Reilly or invited on Anderson Cooper, who's now been exposed as CIA going back to college, and he's total front guy, part of the fake paid off media. Don't believe it, type in Bush paid $1.6 million for fake news. You'll get all the reports on it. And so the reason this is, I've kind of digressed and forgot my point. I was getting into...
Well, you were just you were talking about Anderson Cooper, about how
CIA.
you're talking about the real news.
Sure. Exactly. So there's real articles in the Chicago Tribune. They're not all government. It's just that if people ever wonder why I'm a good reporter, why is my story in the Chicago Tribune pretty high level?
Yes.
But as a reporter, and I talked to one of the reporters, they would think that if they uncovered the fact that DynCorp and Halliburton had lobbyists inside of the Capitol, 2 of them full time, to stop the Pentagon from enforcing existing law to ban sex slavery, and including underage sex slavery. And so I go, well, here's the Chicago Tribune, and so what I do is de-regionalize it.
Right.
Because I take a website that's seen all over the world. Chicago Tribune is too, but not really. Most of their viewers are still there in the Illinois area.
What I notice is that a lot of these, what you call regional stories, we think of them as a story that happens in one place, but you find that the same thing happens in city after city all over the country, but it's treated as a local story and it never reaches up to the national attention.
Exactly. So we break that.
Yes.
We break that cycle, and that's our number one job, is to show people a pattern. Listen, they call it Head Start. They call it Secure Start in England. I think in Australia it's called something like Smart Start. It's the exact same programs written by the same central planners who are financed by the very same banks and the very same systems that want the exact same outcome. And these big corporations, folks, most of them do not want free market. They want monopolies. They want oligopolies. And see, the liberals are going, we need big government to counter those evil corporations. And then the conservatives go, no, leave the corporations entirely alone. The problem is that the left doesn't get it because big government is the tool of big corporations. It's the mechanism, the force they use to come in and control us, as you know well, as Libertarian. And then the conservatives think you totally leave corporations alone and you don't regulate them. Well, I don't believe in base regulation unless it's, I believe in lawsuits and civil actions is what will truly constrain it. But when a corporation starts acting as a government, the 42, 44 of the biggest economies or corporations, the top 100, you'd think it was all governments. No, 40-something of them are companies. So the problem is they're acting like governments. So I'm not even calling for regulations. It's criminal. We need to go and arrest these people.
Okay. Before we go on, Alex, we're about halfway through the show. So for people who are just tuning in, you're watching Live and Let Live on Saturday, October 14th. And I'm Gary Johnson, and we are here with Alex Jones, and he is talking about basically the government, and right now about the government and business working together to give people special privileges that they don't deserve. Before we go on, Alex, there was one more website we haven't looked at. This is I think it's Propaganda Matrix. I think it's that. No?
Yeah, no, that is.
Okay, what is that?
That is the original website that Paul was doing when I hired him. And he keeps his, but really it's a it's kind of a satellite or a I would call it a mirror. But it has a few things that are different about it and original to it. A lot of the sites have a lot of the same info, but then there's always other stuff that's different to each site.
Yes.
And so Propaganda Matrix is his personal thing.
Okay. And there's one other website that we'll look at in a moment, and that's Prison Planet TV. And I guess that's the one where people can actually watch your show. And
that's where they can support. Yeah, that's an avenue where, almost everything's on Google and YouTube, but this is a place where there's news every day and articles, but also it's a subscription site. And then they get everything. And they get it first, and they get it in a higher bandwidth than what you'll find other places.
And they get your radio show.
Yes.
Okay. Well, now, Alex, I really want to shift gears, and let's talk about, I don't know what to call it, the torture bill, the detainee bill, the military commission bill.
The Enabling Act.
Yes. You referred to it earlier, what is it, 6166 or 6616?
6166.
6166. What is it?
Well, they tried to pass Patriot Act 2. They passed Patriot Act 1 on October 27, 2001, during the anthrax attacks and all the fear, which you never heard who did that, did you, folks? That's because when the government does it, they can't have a real trial. And again, by government, I mean criminal elements. Bush and his whole cabinet were on Cipro. Yes. And it was military grade. They claimed somebody made it in a bucket, and it was Fort Detrick, and on and on and on. But all of Bush's enemies, people that showed his daughters on top of each other drunk, got bailed it. Tom Daschle got mailed it. But that's a small part of the case. So they passed Patriot Act 1. They tried to pass Patriot Act 2. They tried to call it the reauthorization, but most of the new stuff they wanted got stripped out. And to make a long story short, best case scenario, Bush got this passed and twisted arms to do this because he's called a war criminal now. They've tortured people who were innocent. They have detained people without charges. They've done all these things. Bush has spied on the American people, which is admittedly illegal. Congress and the courts have told him it's illegal. So he went to Congress and he said, pass my Military Commissions Act. And basically it legalized everything that Bush had done retroactively since 2001 that the courts had ruled was illegal. And it's even in there. It says he's given immunity. He's actually pardoned himself through Congress with a law retroactively, which if you really look at jurisprudence and precedents, you really can't do. Right. Like Bush pardoned himself for barbecuing children on the White House lawn. Now, the scary thing about 6166 is I went and read this when the Senate passed it under the Senate version, which was then duplicated. And that night I'm sitting there reading it, and I actually couldn't sleep. My wife's reading it with me, and I'm showing her the subsections, and I'm going to U.S. codes. That's how you have to read it.
Yes.
And it gave the enemy combatant designations. It told the crimes you could be secretly arrested for, secretly tried by a classic kangaroo show court, and then secretly executed. And I was sitting there reading it section by section. We have analysis on prisonplanet.com. That's stuff we do that people really like to read. A regular story we put out might have a couple 100,000 readers, but like I won the Project Censored Award in 2004 for my analysis of Patriot Act 2. People say, oh, it's so scholarly, it's so good. Hell, man, you just go read it. It's right there. Then go look at the U.S. code. Stuff's hidden in it. It'll say under the section of code. Then you go look at what the code says.
Right.
But it is the Enabling Act. It's the Enemy and Sedition Act. It is the Trading with the Enemy Act. It's the stuff that almost caused another civil war a few years after this country formed. It's the stuff that that they used at the end of World War I. But it's worse than that. I mean, and I wrote an analysis that Friday morning that a lot of people read, and some people had trouble believing. Then I was heartened because by Sunday, the New York Times, the Washington Post, the San Francisco Chronicle, all the papers, the lawyers, the LA Times went and read it and said it's the end of America if they enforce this. It's totally unconstitutional. It says if you don't show total allegiance to the government, and it says government, that means the president, and because the whole document says executive, unitary executive, Führer precept, just absolute ruler. And it says if you don't show total allegiance, you will be then stripped as a citizen. Because it says early on, citizens this can't happen to. But then it says we will strip citizens instantly, arbitrarily, under the president, the defense secretary, or any of their designates. And so they then say you're not a citizen, just like they did to other folks. And then they strip you of it instantly. You're secretly arrested. It's got sections about if you damage property, if you...
Well, there's something in there about if you give money to unapproved groups.
Oh, yes. You can give money to a group that gives it to the group. Remember about 2 years ago, O'Reilly had some Florida professor on, and he said, I think you're a traitor. I'm going to have you research...
Who said that? O'Reilly said it?
Yes,
Okay.
yes. And this just happened again. Now he called for Jim Fetzer to be arrested and for the FBI to come get him.
Who is Jim Fetzer?
The head of 9/11 Scholars for Truth, former Marine Corps officer, great guy. And he was on a few nights ago, and he
He's
said...
a professor in where?
In Minnesota.
Minnesota.
Yeah, and then he just became a McKnight Scholar Emeritus, and he just retired a few weeks ago, and moved to Wisconsin. So you're right, he's now in Wisconsin, but he was a professor in Minneapolis, St. Paul. But again, this is all complex, convoluted stuff. Bottom line, go read HR 6166. Go read the different. Don't believe my analysis. Hell, that's another thing. I may get passé, which is fine with me, because whereas 5 years ago, you would never hear the truth in the LA Times or the Washington Post, or rarely. Now, because they became so discredited and they weren't even part of the game anymore. I'm not saying the reporters who were evil decided to be good now. No, good reporters who were always there were then turned loose a little bit. And so they're going and reading the same thing I'm reading. They're talking to the same law scholars I'm talking to, the same constitutional scholars. So the good news is that it has been now heralded. It has been admitted that they butchered at least 9 of the first 10 amendments. And then last week, Keith Olbermann, did you see that clip on the web?
I may have seen the show, actually, but go on.
Keith Olbermann goes on and says, why does Posse Comitatus hate America?
Right.
And he goes
Keith
through...
Olbermann, he's on MSNBC as a show on
Countdown.
Weekly. Yeah.
And I mean, it was like, I'm going to say Alex Jones or Gary Johnson, but I mean, you know, his solutions to the Democrats, and that's all false. He means well. I know folks that know him out in California when he was a sportscaster. He's a good guy, he's smart. And he just goes through it, what the section is, what it does. And I mean, so good. I mean, to, you know, keep in the game, to stay pertinent, or to, what's the term, you know, to even count.
Relevant?
Relevant. Yeah, I always have problems with that word. Yeah, to stay relevant, or to even, you know, seem like they're on the board, you know, in this game of media. They're having to do it. And I say, great. Listen, I would love for the mainstream media to do the right thing. I would love for them, you know, to and then I could just recede off and go do other stuff, because I mean, listen, this is a war for me. The reason we've had success is we're constantly fighting. And I get excited when I see some young 23-year-old guys make a film like Loose Change and get 30 million viewers on the web conservatively. I get excited when I see some new websites come out about 9/11, and you know, and I don't get mad that it's taken me 8 years to build my sites up as big as Dallas Morning News. There are people been around 3 months that are already 10,000 on the web and are about to race past me at 5,000. You know, Dallas Morning News is like 5,000. Limbaugh's 5,000. I mean, you know, these are big sites.
Right.
So I'm excited. And of course, that's 5,000 out of like however many billion pages there are.
Well, earlier you said that you were, you know, at some point thinking of leaving the country, having your family leave the country. And I think part of this came after you interviewed Jesse Ventura, the former governor of Minnesota, who said that he now lives in Mexico.
Yeah, and he told me on air a little bit and then off even more. He said, listen, you can't, he's like, I've given up. It's fascism. And you can pull up his other quotes publicly. He's been saying, he said, the country's gone. And no, I mean, that happened. And then I was listening to him, and then HR 6166 passed.
Yes.
And you know, it's one thing for Bush. Let's be clear. He was doing all of this illegal stuff before. Okay, and they were telling him, the courts and the Congress, you can't do that. Then somehow he twisted arms. Notice that Foley thing came right at the same time, I think, to scare people. Right the same day they passed it. It broke the day before. You know, kind of started breaking on Wednesday, Thursday, and then they passed it on Friday. And at first, we're passing it 60-something to 30-something. And then it went back after it went into conference, because, you know, they have to confer and get it exactly the same. And it was 100 to zip in the Senate. Yeah. I mean, they really blackmailed some people, which is atrocious. And, I mean, I read, so to have them codify torture, to have them codify secret arrest of citizens, and to have it say if you damage property or if you go on property you're not allowed to go on, or if you intimidate people politically near any of these groups, or if you give money to a group that then gives money to terrorists retroactively. And now Limbaugh, right before he said that I'm the big leader of the 9/11 truth movement and I'm all evil and full of propaganda and crazy, and when Limbaugh, that guy's got 22 million listeners. He's the biggest media event in this country. He is. I mean, top stuff like O'Reilly, Top Night has like 3 million on his TV show. Right before he said that, he said all this liberal media, which they keep in the phony left-right paradigm. It isn't all liberal media. It's just a way of keeping it left-right. That, really the monopoly of the one-party system. They claim it's a two-party system. He just says all those liberals need to be arrested. They're traitors. Limbaugh didn't used to talk like that. Michael Weiner Savage did, the big beatnik of the '60s, now turned conservative. And now Michelle Malkin and all of these people are talking about we need to be arrested. We need to be, because it's like Gandhi said, first they ignore you, then they laugh at you, then they attack you, then you win. What's scary is the mainstream media is losing all their listeners. Sorry.
I want to ask you, you're in radio, and
Sure.
You've been in radio for a long time. You're talking now about a lot of people saying the same thing in radio. And so what did they get? Marching orders? They get talking points? I mean, how does that work?
Okay. The best way to describe it is from a CIA program, Mockingbird. Why is it called Mockingbird? Declassified, started in the 40s, right through into the 70s when it got, the church committees exposed it.
Frank Church.
Yeah, Frank Church. Billions of dollars even then. Every year, New York Times, Washington Post, Time Life, CBS, and then they brag. I mean, we have the documents now. Kermit Roosevelt, in an after-action report in '53, after he overthrew Iran by staging terror, brags at 10 Downing Street and to the White House, Eisenhower, that our friends in the media that we've paid off, this is working really great, we need to expand this. But everybody isn't paid off. You hear Bush, bought $1.6 billion in fake news, and much of it was reporters. And the media will decide to report on just Armstrong Williams and how he got 245,000 or was it 55,000 just to give 10 speeches on TV and say he was for No Child Left Behind. Can you imagine making 200 plus grand? And that's a pretty good job if you can get it for just going out and saying 10 times on TV and giving a few speeches that you're for No Child Left Behind. But it's Department of Justice, it's Department of Labor, it's Department of Commerce, it's Department of Agriculture, it's Department of Defense mainly. I saw a report, it was like 8 million or something last year alone for fake letters to the editor. Whole Pentagon departments writing fake letters to editors all over the world, not just the U.S.
Right.
Okay. But the whole media is in control. They control the editors. They control key writers, who then they make kings. They put them on the shows. They put them on the nightly news. You always see them. The William Crystals, the Bill Gertz, people like that. And so here's how the pyramidal structure works. You've got the top of the pyramid. You've got the top of the pyramid right here, and these are the guys.
Can you come in here and zoom the camera?
I mean, this is gonna be primitive. It's all right. I mean, if they want to, they can. You've got the top of the pyramid right here, who are paid off. Okay, who actually, a lot of them are actual CIA agents, and then these top guys right here. Then all the little guys, it's just follow the leader. It's mindless peer pressure. Well, Rush Limbaugh's big because of this. Well, Matt Drudge is big because of this. Well, Katie Couric is big because, and she's just a newsreader. She's not, government. And so they all then down here lower in the pyramid, they all then just regurgitate what the capstone is saying. And that's why the CIA called it Mockingbird. Mockingbird, here's a lawnmower, here's you're yelling at your wife, here's a backfire. Right. It mocks it. So it's a snowball. The media, the neocons say, it wasn't bin Laden that attacked us. The White House, and you even hear the talking point. The White House says, stop worrying about bin Laden, it's Saddam. Remember that in 2002? Right. And suddenly, you could see their pictures interchanged. It's Saddam, not bin Laden. And they flip a switch. Now it's bin Laden, and suddenly bin Laden, bin Laden, bin Laden. You can see it.
Right. So it seems to me that the alternative media, the internet, networks like Genesis Communications, with their voices out there, it used to be there were like 3 networks, and all these people that you're talking about, they had complete control. There was no competition. There was no alternative to what they were saying, and so that's all we heard.
Well, that's what I keep trying to get at. And Gary, you're so good at just boiling it down, crystallizing it down. This is my 4th interview today. I get a little bit dingy, but you just boiled it and condensed it all down. You crystallized it. What are they going to do? Right. I mean, if a 25-year-old young man or woman who's got a good brain can start a website and start just commenting and pointing out lies and using search engines to find the different statements, and people start listening.
Right.
And people are doing real investigative reports. I'm nobody. There's folks out there just doing, and I just see this new rise. I mean, I'm even starting to be eclipsed by it. And I'm going, hallelujah, I may live in a free country. I may not have to flee. You know, and I mean, this is like life and death. And so all that passion's being put in. And also the alternative media all judge each other, but not in a mean way. They check facts, help each other.
Right.
Hey, that's wrong. Okay, thanks.
That's good.
Here's this. And I mean, it's like an organic intelligence network that it's like we're all connected like a big computer, like millions of brains. Now billions of brains are all just like, and stuff travels almost instantaneously through all these different people.
Right.
And then it's all synthesized. So what is the establishment going to do as their whole empire crumbles, as people learn they're liars? Here's an example. And I know you've talked about this. I've seen the show. They had a bunch of big Scripps Howard News Service polls and Gallup polls a few months ago. And I like to average polls together because that's what the focus groups and the politicians do. And some said 75, and some said 85, and some said 82. So I averaged them together and got over 80% of a whole bunch of big polls, because I don't just trust one. I like to, get multiple polls. So I averaged a bunch of polls together, and I found over 80% trust no party now. They don't trust the Democrats. That is, the two parties. They trust third parties. They don't trust the Democrats. They don't trust the Republicans. In the past, it was kind of a tag team, like fake wrestling or good cop, bad cop. Right. The Democrats would get in and we'd wake up to their corruption, and no, the Republicans will save us. And we'd put them in, and oh, now you'll save us. No, well, you're corrupt too. We'll put the Democrats back in. Now, for the first time ever, though unfortunately people don't have a chance in a lot of cases to actually go vote for a Green Party or Libertarian or Constitutional or something serious like that. I think Libertarian is the most serious of the three. But the people want the option. For the first time, they go, no, we don't trust any of you over 8/10. We don't believe you're all working for global corporations. You're not free market. We're getting back to real definitions of freedom versus liberty. A real populism is forming, and folks are getting informed on key issues. They know we've been lied to. And so in the past, you'd have Democrats at 60, Republicans at 40, and then people would wake up, you'd have Republicans at 60 and Democrats at 50. Now it's no, we don't trust any of you. Again, they don't trust mainstream media. They don't trust the Democrats. They don't trust the Republicans. They don't trust the PR firms. So what are the PR firms doing? A lot of that $1.6 billion that Bush spent in fake news was for fake blogs, fake libertarian blogs.
Oh, they're fake blogs now. Oh.
Yeah, just you can find it. Yeah. Fake blogs. Oh, like Viacom, something to Redstone.
Yes.
This was a Frontline piece. Has whole office buildings, like 5-story buildings in one.
That's why they're so interested in MySpace and all the rest.
Exactly. And they've got fake profiles and all this stuff. And, oh, yeah, it's sick. But they've got whole buildings where they actually go hire all the young kids. I mean, talking 16-year-olds making a couple grand a month, and they go type and just hype up a band. A lot of it's commercial. But then on the other side of that, it's Pentagon, and they're saying, but the problem is then those kids go defect and write articles about it and show photos of the facilities.
Right.
And so I mean, it's
that's good. That's good.
so see, I mean, it's just the more they try, the more hit pieces they write, the more hit pieces they make. It's this organic brain now. The human brain is interfaced with cyberspace. Alternative news. You can go look at the graphs on Google and Yahoo.
Yes.
Is starting to eclipse porn. Folks, if alternative news is about, and sometimes eclipsing, you look at the graphs, it's like this. If alternative news is starting to, and I meant to do a story about this, we pulled this up the other day, is starting to eclipse porn. I mean, that's the mating instinct. That's the most base thing in a mammal or any other species. I mean, because it's about survival. People now know real information is about survival. Now, there's still that mass of people that don't care and won't care. But Gary, as you know,
yes,
it was 5% that started the war for revolution. It was 5% that won it in this country.
Right.
And folks, we don't need the majority. Well, you know what? We've got it. I mean, look at this. New York Times CBS poll, 84%, ladies and gentlemen, do not believe the official 9/11 story. Only 16% now believe official fable. Now, this is also what we do with mainstream media. Look at the headline. Americans question Bush on 9/11 intelligence. They spun that. You read the actual questions, it says, do you believe the story? Think they're hiding things? Think they're covering up? 84%. But then the media spins it to something it wasn't. We take it and unspin it to what it clearly says. And then you're the judge if we're spinning. But we point out spin and try to teach you how to see spin.
Let me ask you, you mentioned the Libertarians a moment ago. Let me ask you a couple of questions about Libertarians. On Monday's show, the caller called in and asked you about Michael Badnarik, and you said you know Michael and you like Michael, but you also criticized Michael for not talking about 9/11.
Well, I know Michael is super smart.
Yes.
And were you listening Monday? I'm flattered.
Yes. I listen
No,
to everybody.
listen. I like Michael, and I've known him for years. I've had dinner with him several times, many
Yes.
times, and I'm very impressed with him.
Yes.
And I know he's very sharp as a tack, sharp as an ice pick,
Yes.
a sharpened ice pick. And you know, I've been around him, and I think, and I've told him this. He's called me and stuff, and I just, you know, if he wants to know why I've gotten a little, and I don't like to hide things. I don't want to call it betrayal because I would still vote for him over Michael McCall. My God,
Right.
give me Michael Badnarik. I said I would vote for him.
Yes.
But, and I don't want to say things here on air that'll hurt him politically because he thinks that. But, you know, him and his campaign manager, they're trying to play the part of the guy in the suit and the thing, and now his hair is all coiffed, and he's all, when he's on camera, there when I'm talking to him in the studio, because I also videotaped the radio show and then put it on the web.
Yes.
You know, with the video. And
Yes.
I'm sitting there, and I mean, Michael's going, you know, all these politician answers with the pen in his hand like this, and I'm just like, hey, man, talk about 9/11. You know, and so I'm just telling him that, you know, 84% here. I mean, come on, Michael, we need you to talk about it.
All right. Then there's another Libertarian. I don't know if I can get his website up here.
I mean, what do you think about my comment about Michael?
I'm just a little surprised. I mean, you know, it's all.
I'm not mad at him.
Okay. Okay.
Well, what did I say on the show?
Basically, we just said just now.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, I mean, I'm allowed to say, look, I know he knows. He knows about it. He needs to just put it out on the
Okay.
table.
Okay.
He needs to put the kikis on the table. The huevos.
All right. Another Libertarian is Stan Jones.
I love him.
All right. Who is he and why do you love him?
Well, I mean, you can go to prisonplanet.com and watch the video clip off C-SPAN. He came right out and said we're going into the North American Union, official documents. Our government is the terrorist, and they're terrorizing us, and we're going into total police state. Air Force veteran, great guy. And
Running for U.S. Senate in
yeah,
Montana.
and since he'll come out and say and lay it out, he wasn't scripting. Since he wasn't doing that, I said, people give him money.
All right.
You know,
So you like Libertarians in general, and you like Michael. I didn't really expect.
No, it's because I respect him enough. I respect Michael enough that also people listen and watch me because I really don't script it.
Yes.
And I'll have something where I want to say it, and I go, and most people, well, I better not say that. I'm just, no, you know what? Michael's a smart guy. I admire him. I think I said that too.
Yeah,
But he
oh,
just
yeah,
needs to
absolutely.
go public about 9/11.
I'd say 90% of what you said was very positive, and you could put it in a brochure. It was all very positive.
Well, it's just that, look, I mean, he knows about 9/11, so he needs to, talk about it.
All right.
He needs to at least come out and say, well, we know we've been lied to about the official story. We need to investigate.
Okay. You said something earlier that I thought was kind of interesting. You talked about the audience of radio versus the audience of television. And people have an impression that more people watch television than listen to radio. But is that true? Because you're comparing...
The same amount of people listen to radio. Roughly, it's a little bit more listen to radio. Those are all official statistics from every angle.
Right.
People say, well, statistics lie. No, not basic statistics, folks. Not the free market. These are real statistics. We're almost out of time, but let me just break this down. There are 400 plus channels with the average cable system or dish now.
Okay.
It's fractured and divided audience. With radio, you've only got a handful of things that are on. It's growing, and overnight even less. So Coast to Coast AM with George Norrie has half, like 54% of total AM audience.
Okay.
So he's got 16 million listeners a night.
Okay.
Rush Limbaugh has like 22 million.
Okay.
Because he is on 600 radio stations, and there's only 2 or 3 talk choices because of these monopolies. So there's still quasi-monopolies in radio, and so it's one of the only places you find old-line media where you have the big audiences. There are more people listening to big national radio shows, the 2 or 3 that are out there, than there are watching, say, ABC Nightly News.
Okay.
And so you've got the nightly news that still has 15, 14, 20 million tops watching. You've got old-line radio. And I'm more like fringe radio, but that's where we got our original seed listeners to drive the websites. It sounds like I'm a lot. I'm on 80-something stations. But really, a lot of them are mom and pops.
I'm going to cut you off there, Alex, because we're at the end of the show, and you can listen to Alex on the unlicensed radio stations around the town, and also on KLBJ Radio on Sunday afternoons at 4 p.m.
And go see Terror Storm at Google Video for free.
Right.
They're trying to censor it. Give it to everybody on your email list. Help us promote Terror Storm at Google Video. And Gary, thanks for letting me come on here and run rampant.
Oh, thank you, Alex, for being on Live and Let Live.
Thank you.
I'm Gary Johnson. Good night.
That was great, man.
Next week on Live and Let Live, Gene Stevens will interview Robert Rock Howard, the Libertarian candidate for State Senator District 14. He will talk about his campaign against former Austin Mayor Kirk Watson. Rock Howard next week on Live and Let Live, Saturday, October 21st, 8 p.m., Channel 10.
Vote for Bagnerick and vote for Rock Howard.